Hello and welcome back to another episode of Focus on K-12, EdTech, and the Education Experience. I'm your host, Doug Konopelko, Education Strategist and National Esports Manager for CDWG. Today, I talk with Knikole Taylor. Knikole is a self-described teacher cheerleader. She takes us through a little bit of what it's like right now working with teachers and leaders in our school districts. Let's dive in.
Hello, my name is Knikole Taylor. I am an instructional content specialist. I really could say I'm just a teacher cheerleader, right? So I'm a tech enthusiast, and my job is simply to make teachers' jobs easier, whatever that means. So I was a classroom teacher for 10 years before moving into an instructional coaching role, where I really helped to write curriculum and coach teachers and help them remove barriers. And after doing that for a number of years, I moved over into more the ed tech side. And so now I just see my role as helping teachers teach better through the lens of technology, appropriate, choosing the right tools to get the job done.
Sounds good. So let's get right to it. What do your conversations with coaches and teachers, look like, sound like, feel like right now?
Well, right now, there are a lot of deep breaths, a lot of like, where are you? Checking in. I will say like 2 or 3 years ago, it was more like, what's your question? Where can I help you? How can I be a resource? But I will say that here lately, it's been a lot of checking in, because a lot of times, coaches, that's our role when it comes to supporting teachers, is that we're checking in with them. And so a lot of times our conversations start with, some mental health checks and talking about how we can take care of each other. And then we're doing a lot of problem solving, because right now, a lot of coaches are having to serve as substitutes. And so how can we use the time while we're, serving in the classroom? How can we use that time to really help to shine a light on what we can do in our coaching services? And so a lot of problem solving. How do we, model good instruction while we're also in the classroom? How do we help teachers? How do we relieve stress? Those are a lot of our conversations, along with the fun techie stuff.
Yeah. So what's some of the ed tech pieces that you most enjoy getting involved with?
Oh, the organizational stuff. I'm a checklist girl. So I spend a lot of time in the Google world. And so a lot of times, a lot of those conversations boil down to helping either the coach or helping the coach help the teacher with organization. So using things like Task, and with Google Calendar, using things like Google Keep, using things like your calendar with time slots to really help hone in on a chunk of time to get the work done. And so I love organization. Sometimes I feel like I'm an organized mess, but I know where things are and I know what needs to get done. But I really love, because it can alleviate so much stress when you know what needs to be done, and you kind of have a plan. So I'll say I spend a lot of time there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, I'm really organized professionally and we won't go into personally, right? We'll just stick with professionally for now. But always using like Google Sheets, right, for everything. Things that have no business being in Google Sheets. The boxes, the lines, it all just works.
Yeah,
So
Google Docs allows you now to have like checklists. So that's also really cool, is you can just build a checklist in Docs. And I don't know, it's something about putting something on the checklist and marking it off. Like you feel so accomplished.
yeah, I mean, listen, right in front of me right now is a very long checklist that is not, it's not doing so great, but we're getting there. So what are some of the other things that you're working on right now with teachers as it applies to sort of that ed tech work?
Yeah, and progress over perfection, friend. You'll get there with that checklist. One of the things that we've been talking about a lot over the last year is a framework for teaching with technology. And so really just good teaching is good teaching. And so it starts with the standards. What should students know and be able to do? So really like take, because technology, there's so much. And if you're someone like myself, like you want to do all the things, right? There's a new tool that comes out. You just want to try it and you want to let your kids try it. You want to see what it's about. But going back to what do standards say students need to know and be able to do, and then using that as your building block to select the right tool, right? Because not all tools will get the job done, right? Not all tools will help kids, reach mastery or even understand whatever the subject matter is. So I'll say, I mean, for sure, like the last year, I've spent a lot of time just helping teachers go through their standards, look at the level of knowledge that is expected of the students, look at what kids should know and be able to do, and then like work backwards. So if they do this and then they do that, then they'll be able to master this skill, or we'll be able to extend that skill. So I think like I said, good teaching is good teaching. I think about when I bake a cake, I like to bake cakes and eat cakes. So when I bake a cake, I'm not a girl that likes icing. Like, I don't necessarily have to have the icing. I just want the cake because the girl, I can cook. And so I want the cake. Because the cake is good. So the icing just makes it taste better, right? But if the cake is terrible, it's just going to be a terrible cake with icing on top. And that's how I see technology. Like, you have to have a good understanding of what your standards say that kids should know and be able to do, so that you know what your teacher moves are, right? And so if you don't know your teacher moves and you don't have an understanding of technology, then you don't have an understanding of the standards also, then it's just putting yucky icing on a yucky cake, right? I don't care how good the technology is. So I spend a lot of time just helping teachers dig through their standards to make sure they understand what it is they're teaching, and then we can have fun and select the right tool for the job.
Well, I mean, now you've got me just thinking about and wanting cake. I'm going to try not to hold that against you. So as we go forward, obviously right now, one of the things that we're talking a lot about with teachers, is having grace and understanding with students. But in your work as a coach and someone who's a teacher cheerleader, right? How are we supporting, or how do we better support maybe our teachers with grace and understanding so that they can pay it forward?
I have a really good friend who's up in the Boston area, Lizzie. And so Lizzie actually gave me an idea that you can send out a form and allow teachers to just check in with you. I know during the pandemic, she put together this great form, and it was like, how can I support you? Some teachers just wanted to have a place to come and plan, to just have that human interaction. Some teachers wanted, hey, can you just send an email and check on me once a week? So I think it goes back to, and we have to be really intentional, says the techie, of making sure that we still have that human interaction. Because I'm so good for sending a text. I'm so good for sending an email. Like, when someone calls me, I'm like, why didn't they just text me? But sometimes people just need that conversation. And so I know that even myself, that I have to say, hey, you haven't called this person, or you haven't gone to lunch with this person. So building in time, even if you're in the building, to just go by and open the door once a week with every teacher you support, or once a month if your caseload is so big, and just say, hi, I'm just here to see if there's anything that you need, or finding a way to do that virtually. That old adage, like, nobody cares about what you know until they know that you care, like, that rings true, because humans, we just need to know that someone sees me, as a human, and that they care about me. So doing things like a Google form to send out and check in on teachers once a week, or old fashioned opening the doors, just depending on what your coaching load looks like.
Yeah, I think too, what happens is when we have like an agenda for a virtual meeting, we tend to not stray from that agenda at all. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, if you and I are going to connect on this project, we'll like only talk about that project. Whereas when I come and see you in person, we talk about everything. We talk about your kids, we talk about my kids, we talk about how everybody's doing. So, I
Right.
think that, we've got to either be more intentional about bringing those like in between moments. That's how CC Chung, who was the Hawaii Teacher of the Year last year, kind of described it, right? We're missing these in between moments that we have a
Yeah.
lot when we're in person. Either being intentional about bringing those into the virtual spaces, or saying, I'm going to be intentional about getting in front of people and being with people.
Yeah. And if you have an agenda, if you're a checklist person like the two of us, right? And you have to get that through that agenda, just make that the first thing on your agenda, right? We're going to check in, and it doesn't have to be chaotic. It could be something like a Jamboard, or it could be something like a Padlet where they, post a GIF or GIF. That'd be another fight, right? Post however you pronounce that word, GIF or GIF, to check in and let us know how you feel. And then if they want to add comments, they can. And so that can also let people know, oh, you know what, this is way more than a training, or this is way more than a meeting. Like, this facilitator wants to check in on me and see how I am before they start with the business at hand. And it could, I mean, just that little 5 to 10 minutes at the beginning and or the end of your meeting really can pay great dividends in the future for you as a coach.
What else do you feel like folks are really looking for right now? Obviously, they want someone who's understanding, somebody who cares about how they're feeling, right? As we move forward, I know that you said a lot of folks have been getting pulled in a lot of different directions and substituting. I was in a district office the other day where, district directors are going down and substituting because there's such a shortage. So, other than sort of those things that I feel like are a little more obvious right now, is there anything else you feel like you've been working on with folks?
Time. People want things that are going to save them time. So any tool that a teacher can set up and it will self-grade or give them data that they can make, that I don't want to have to give kids a test and then spend the whole evening looking at the data. I want to throw them some questions right now, look at it right now, and see what I need to do in 5 minutes, right? So anything that would allow teachers to really get really great formative assessment data in the moment. I know teachers are all over that right now, just really, with the learning loss that you see people debating and talking about, right? They want to know where their kids are. And again, with time, and I don't have a whole afternoon, or I may not even get a full planning period to grade things and get that information. So things like Edpuzzle, things like Pear Deck, even Google Forms for all the things, things that really allow you to formatively assess, teach a little, assess a little, Nearpod, tools like that allow you to teach a little and assess a little and see where kids are. And they're not, I always choose tools also that as the facilitator of learning, the teacher, they're also fun for me, right? The learning space should be fun, not just for the kids, but also for the facilitator of learning. And so a lot of those tools also, as you're instructing and you're using them, they're also very interactive for the students. They also free you up so that as kids are interacting with the assignment, you can go around and you can have conversations and you can see in real time where kids are and what your next move needs to be like in 5 minutes, not 5 days.
So, Knikole, you work with people from all over the country. I'm sure you've already mentioned a lot of different tools. For other folks who are just trying to kind of stay in the know, right? What are some other resources, blogs, books, or some other people, in addition to Lizzie, that you heavily rely on, or that our listeners or viewers should connect with?
So, Caitlin Tucker is one of my absolute faves, and you can find her. It's Caitlin, Katlin, Tucker.com. She's also on Twitter. Anything dealing with blended learning, she's great. And she's also really responsive. You can post questions to her. I also follow Val Brown, which is not necessarily like ed tech, but this is just to help myself stay in check as a good human, right? Val has a great community, and you can follow her. She's Valeria Brown, Valeria Brown EDU on Twitter. You can also follow the hashtag Clear the Air on Twitter. And so they just post a lot of things, a lot of talk about being an equitable educator, equity and diversity. A lot of conversations in that community that just help me check myself, keep myself in check. And so that's where I keep that alerts on that community, because I share great readings, great conversations. And I found that community a couple of years ago, and that's probably hands down the community that has changed me the most in all areas. And then lastly, because I gotta have 3, right? Lastly, I spend a lot of time with Google. So Google EDU, if you follow Google EDU on Twitter, they're always changing and adapting based on teacher requests. And so I usually follow that Twitter account just to see like what changes are coming or what changes have been put out as well.
Well, Nicole, thank you so much for sharing some time and your stories with us.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us today on Focus on K-12 EdTech and the Education Experience. If you enjoyed today's show, please feel free to like, subscribe, and click the little bell so that you get notified whenever we post a new episode. Or reach out to me on Twitter at @dconopelco. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time as we focus on K-12.